Welcome to the latest episode of Trojans Wired, the podcast, which is an in-house production of the website Trojans Wire. We are part of the College Wire Network. All right, so we hope that you checked out our podcast on USC's Big Ten regular season championship, the win in the rematch over UCLA. We also hope that you've been following Cece Clay at her Substack. Lots of great stuff in terms of the written realm, and also her YouTube channel video breakdown of the UCLA game and also of the press conferences. We've had a lot of interesting comments on both sides. So Cece Clay, she's bringing you her written work, she's bringing you YouTube content, and then this is the other part of her triple threat contribution to USC women's basketball analysis, our podcast. So if you haven't caught our UCLA victory review show, go and find that. We've been tweeting it out, and that's part of our archives. And hopefully, if you missed anything, just cycle through our archives. But now we present our standalone episode, as promised, our preview of the 2025 Big Ten Women's Basketball Tournament, Wednesday through Sunday in Indianapolis. And so, Cece, we're gonna get to that tournament preview. We're gonna look at the battle for number one seeds in the NCAA tournament. All that good stuff. But first, USC hauled in the hardware, cleaning up on the Big Ten awards circuit as it richly and fully deserved. Let's go through the awards and your reaction to USC bringing it home on the awards circuit.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Matt. Lindsey Gottlieb, Coach of the Year, well deserved. And I just did a couple articles on Lindsey about her coaching style. And also the last one that I wrote, which I thought was really, really special, was the fact that her, Marianne Stanley, and Cheryl Miller are the only ones to have beaten UCLA 4 times in a row. And so that's a huge article, so go read it. It's very good. And then the other thing is they announced when she was announced as the Coach of the Year, it's the first time that she has been, or USC has had a Coach of the Year for a conference since Marianne Stanley. So that's dating back. I don't know how many years that is, but that's before Cheryl Miller, back in the 90s. So long time ago. So congratulations to Lindsey, well deserved. Her accomplishments are. If you go read about her, she has a lot of accomplishments, but what she's done here at SC has just been phenomenal. So very happy for her and very well deserved. And then, of course, Player of the Year was Juju Watkins, well deserved. I don't know if anybody else thought that she wasn't going to get it, but she's very consistent with, even if she's not doing that well on offense, defensively, she's a two-way player. She can do all things that is asked of her. So, and she does, and she's very humble. And if any of you have had a chance to meet her, you know what I'm talking about, because she is just very humble, very nice, very soft-spoken, and does not ignore you if you say hi. So, congratulations to Juju, and then getting all defensive player too. So her and Rhea got all defensive all defensive team, and then Kennedy got on the all freshman team and was honorable mention for the all conference team. There's just so many awards. And so did Rhea. Rhea got honorable mention. And then Malia Samuels got Sportswoman of the Year for the Big Ten. And then can't forget Kiki. Kiki got all conference as well. So just really cleaned up, well deserved. And this team is coming together when it matters most. You don't want them to peak too early. You don't want them to peak too late. And there's always been a plan. And if you got a chance to watch Juju's interview today or Lindsey's interview today, what Juju said was really, really cool when she said that this team, she said her exact words were, "This team is tough. We're just a tough team, and we're playing well together now. And if we stick with what we're supposed to be doing, then she thinks that they can go far in the tournament." And she has some very nice words to say about Coach Lindsey as well, as far as Lindsey being a player's coach. So that was some good stuff to hear. So just really proud of all the players and all that this team is doing, and can't wait to see what's next.
Any of the awards strike you as even slightly a surprise that one player should have been maybe on recognized at a higher level? Do you think it was all
Honestly,
pretty properly calibrated across the board?
I'm biased. I'm biased and I look at things differently. And I thought Kennedy Smith should have been on the all defensive team. She was on the all freshman team, but she didn't make the all defensive team. I thought, I understand that Lauren Betts is a post and she's good in the paint, but defensively, that's it. She's good in the paint. You know what I mean?
The
I
lava. She
didn't.
can't handle the lava.
She can't handle the lava. She's good, where it's nice and cool, right? Just where she's comfortable. I mean, right? That's where she's comfortable in the paint, but you don't see her defending outside of the paint. She won't go in the lava. So I kind of disagreed with the Defensive Player of the Year award. I would like to see Juju get it, or even Rhea, or even Kennedy, because Rhea will come out and defend on the perimeter at least. No, she's not afraid to go in the lava. She's not afraid to switch. She guards the front of the press. She's all over the court. So how you give Lauren Betts that award when she just stays in her comfort zone is beyond me. But it's a coach's award, and I guess some of those teams didn't like that they couldn't take the ball inside on Lauren. But I'm sorry. When I look at the stats and I look at the analytics and I look at the gameplay and the film, when I see Rhea guarding the front of the press and coming out and playing perimeter defense, rebounding and blocking shots and communicating, and I see Lauren afraid to go into the lava. She stays in the comfort zone, which is the paint. I don't see it. I just don't see it.
Yeah. Kennedy Smith is definitely going to be all Big Ten defensive team in the future. Like I
Yeah.
have zero doubt about that. So maybe just the thought that, okay, she's a freshman. We give her the freshman honors and we give a defensive placement to, an upper class woman elsewhere in the Big Ten. So it's
Because she didn't
understandable.
get player of the year.
But
She
I
didn't get
would but
player of
I
the
would
year.
agree. Are there five defensive players better than Kennedy Smith in the Big Ten? I do not think so.
Yeah, not the way. I mean, she holds down the USC defense, right? She is the cornerstone of why our defense is so good because she gets everybody else up and wanting, excuse me, to play better defense. So, but still, I would have picked Rhea over Lauren Betts, and that's just, I mean, because of all the stuff that Rhea does compared to Lauren.
Yeah.
I mean, if Rhea just stayed around the rim and was a rim protector like Lauren, then I could see it. But Rhea is so much more on the defensive side of the ball than what Lauren has displayed to me. So, you know, Lauren's 6'7", and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Absolutely. All right. So USC cleaning up on the awards circuit, and now our attention shifts to Indianapolis for the Big Ten women's tournament. And first things first, number one seed. My thought, and I'll ask you for yours. I think, hey, just if USC wins its quarterfinal, that should be good enough to lock in a one seed. But then the other question is, getting the number one overall seed and how high you rise on the board and which team USC would draw as the two seed in its region. So that's another layer of factors. But just first of all, do you think USC already has a number one seed, period, regardless? Or, you know what, win that quarterfinal to make absolutely sure?
Yeah, I think they need to go to the quarterfinal only because there's 6 or 7 teams right now that could be a number one seed depending on how the conference tourney plays out for these other additional teams. So I think just to be sure, they have to get to the quarter or the semifinal to keep that number one seed. However, I want them to make it to the championship and to win again because seeding in the NCAA tournament, especially this year, is so crucial, especially on the number one line. I don't want them to come in as the fourth number one seed. I want them to come in as a number one or number two number one seed, because I just don't want them to see UConn or even Notre Dame in the same region.
And this is where this is where, obviously beating UCLA is its own reward. It's its own special achievement if you're a USC Trojan. Like, you'll beat them in March, beat them in November, beat them in, anywhere in the world. It's always great to beat the Bruins, but particularly drilling deep for this weekend in Indianapolis, to me, I see the value of beating UCLA, not just winning the Big Ten tournament and possibly getting the #1 overall seed, but also beating UCLA. What that would achieve, I think, would be knocking UCLA down to the 2 line.
Yep, I believe
And
that
if
too.
UCLA is on the 2 line, that increases the odds that UConn moves up to the 1 line. And so that's off the board as a potential Elite Eight opponent. So that would be the specific value of beating UCLA. Like, it's not just sweeping the Bruins three out of 3, which, it's great, it's fun, but it would achieve a specific objective in terms of the bracket, because if UCLA is occupying the 2, that means someone else has to come up to a 1, and that could make the Elite Eight matchup better for USC.
Yeah, well, I think we'll need some help with that. I think we'll get into the Big Ten tournament in a minute, but as far as UConn moving up to the 1 seed, I think we're going to need some help in the SEC for that to happen. So South Carolina or Texas is going to have to lose in the final, and UConn win their tournament in order for that to happen. But I just want to make sure everybody knows I'm not saying that I want UConn out of our region because I don't think we can beat them. I think that we can beat UConn. I just think as far as ROI, for the NCAA as a whole and the schools, because they're getting a percentage now, and audience, I just think the Juju Page matchup would market better as far as revenue is concerned to a national audience.
At the Final Four, that, like, you
Final
want
Four.
that at the Final Four, yeah, not in the
Yeah.
Elite Eight. And my gripe about that scenario, though, is that USC's already beaten UConn. Why are you asking a team to beat another team twice just to get to the Final Four? A rematch should be
Right.
in the Final Four, at the pinnacle. And just the other part of it is that, like, the Elite Eight games, if at all possible, should not be rematches. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that
absolutely.
that that that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, we would all agree, Cece, that Texas is ahead of South Carolina on the seed list, that Texas is the SEC team currently best positioned to get a 1 seed. And so, if we were to choose which SEC team do you not want to win the SEC tournament, would you pick Texas because that way USC can be #1 overall? Or if let's say Texas beats South Carolina, South Carolina maybe then is a 2, and that would play into UConn being a 1 seed, and some other bracket objectives for USC. So Texas or South Carolina, which one if you had to choose? Obviously, in a perfect world, you'd want both to lose, which would probably mean that Kim Mulkey and LSU win the SEC. But if you had to choose between Texas and South Carolina losing, which one would you want to lose more?
If you're talking about us playing a team in a regional 8 to get to the Final Four,
Or just
I
just
I
in
I,
terms of
I
USC's
would.
best interest as you see them.
I mean, you know, I would rather play Texas in a regional 8 game than South Carolina, just because the way we match up. I think that we would have a good chance of beating Texas and then moving on to the Final Four, whether it would be USC, South Carolina, UConn, and possibly Notre Dame and UCLA. That's the final, or UCLA. That's the Final Four I see. So that's what I'm hoping. But if South Carolina loses and they end up for some reason a #2 in our region, I really think that we can beat them matchup wise, that we can beat them as well. So, but I just think Texas is the better matchup for style of play.
Mhm. We haven't talked about Notre Dame. Obviously, that would be another rematch. And of course, this time it would be, USC lost the first time. And of course, Kennedy Smith wasn't on the floor there. But hey, I'm going to be consistent. I don't want rematches in the Elite Eight. I think that should be saved for the Final Four. But, knocking UCLA down to the 2 line, if it happens, that also means there's a better chance of Notre Dame coming up. So, like, either Notre Dame or UConn going up to the 1 line removes both of those teams as Elite Eight options, for USC. if you had to pick Notre Dame or UConn as a potential Elite Eight opponent for USC, which way are you going there?
I'm going Notre Dame. I'm going Notre Dame.
Because
And I
Kennedy
think
Smith
one
would be
because
all in.
yeah, I just think that the get back is the get back. Just like the Big Ten tournament, if there was an opportunity for us to play Iowa, the get back is the get back. And I think to get them back early would be a good sign. They don't want to meet Notre Dame in the Final Four. They'd rather meet UConn in the Final Four, right? Where UConn would see us as a rematch. So I just think that Regional Eight for Notre Dame is a better draw for us.
All right, so we've talked about the other conference tournaments. We've talked about the battle for number one seeds, and a reminder that Selection Sunday is March 16th. And so for those who don't follow women's basketball closely, obviously most of you do, but for those who don't, and this is all kind of new, hey, welcome aboard, first of all. But secondly, the women play their conference tournaments a week before Selection Sunday, then the men have their championship week. So it's going to be a week from the end of the Big Ten women's tournament to Selection Sunday, March 16th. All right, now let's go to the Big Ten tournament in Indianapolis. 5 days, 14 games, 15 schools. There's lots of bubble intrigue in the first few rounds, like Washington versus Minnesota. And this is how deep the Big Ten is. The game between the number 12 seed and the number 13 seed is a bubble game. It's not a game between teams that have no chance to go to the NCAA tournament. Those teams are right on the cut line. According to ESPN's Charlie Cream, he's the women's bracketologist. Washington, Minnesota, right near the cut line, and that's a 12-13 game on Wednesday, day 1 out of 5. So that speaks to the depth of the league that USC has dominated this season. Before we get into USC's matchups, any thoughts on like the bubble matchups in the first few days and just the other things you're looking at the Big Ten Conference as a whole? Going into this tournament, any storylines that you have your eye on other than USC? We'll get to USC very, very soon, but any other general Big Ten storylines that you've been tossing around as you get ready for this very exciting tournament?
Yeah, I think just as you said it, the bubble games are very important games. You know what I mean? Because you got some good teams. I mean, this first one between Washington and Minnesota, that's going to be a good game because I'm looking at the stats right here. That game, Washington beat them by 10, but it was close pretty much throughout the whole game, and then Washington kind of pulled away. This is Washington. They thrive on disrupting, right? They play dirty. They like to get messy, and they like to throw you off your game. So that's going to be an interesting game. And the thing about it is they're in our bracket. You know what I mean? So when I look at the bracket breakdown, and I even though UCLA is the number 2, to me, they got the lucky draw of the toughest team to me that they'll have to face is Ohio State, unless Iowa comes through. They've been playing really well lately. But it's going to be so hard for the bubble teams to win 1, 2, 3, 5 straight games, to win a championship. I don't know if it's ever been done, but UCLA will have to play Ohio State or Michigan State or Iowa. I don't think Illinois is going to make it. So I just think that they have a easier path, even though we're the number 1 seed than we do. But I'm interested to see who's going to win that Washington Minnesota game because then after that they play Michigan, and so that game's going to be pretty good too. And if Iowa wins, they're going to play Illinois, and so it's going to be a great tournament. But as things get up to where SC and UCLA are, SC is either going to have to play Maryland or Washington. I mean, in the first round, they play the winner of Oregon and Indiana, and I don't see them having a problem with either of those teams. But once they get to the quarterfinals or the semifinals, it's Maryland or Washington,
So
or,
so
or
if
even
if it's
Michigan.
if it's
And
Washington versus Michigan, that's a 12-13 winner versus Michigan, the 5 seed. I'm
yep,
getting the sense that you like the double digit seed over the 5 in that matchup.
yeah. Well, if it's Washington, you know what I mean? Michigan, I
Okay.
don't think, I don't think Minnesota can beat Michigan, but Washington, Washington, they always start to get good at the end of the season, right? They're really good at the end of the season. So that Michigan Washington game, I'm gonna be very interested in seeing. Let me see who won that game before the Washington. So Michigan beat Washington 82-69. That game was on January 15th. So there's been some time. There's been another month, right? Now, if we do play Michigan, if Michigan comes and they beat Maryland, which I don't think they'll do, but if that were to happen, then we'll have a rematch with Michigan with Silas Wards. Because when we played Michigan the first time, they didn't have Silas Wards, their freshman star. And we had a hard time with them. You know what I mean? So it's going to be, that's what I'm saying. The teams that we're going to have to face, it's just a lot more challenging than I think what the matchups that UCLA has. So just for matchup purposes.
All right. Now, you did say earlier you're not particularly concerned about Oregon or Indiana. Now, just to raise the point, this tournament's in Indianapolis. So Indiana figures to have a pretty vocal crowd. Now, it won't be Assembly Hall, which you mentioned on this show back in January. That's a really tough place to play. The crowd's right on top of you. This is going to be in the Indiana Pacers building, so not as intimidating an environment. But nevertheless, Indiana gave USC a real battle. So I'm getting the sense that being familiar with Indiana and not playing in Assembly Hall would give, and also having a lot of rest too, would give the Trojans a number of advantages in a potential rematch with Terry Morin's team.
Yeah, but honestly, I don't think they're going to get past Oregon. I think Oregon's playing good right now. Deja
Mm.
Kelly is playing really good, and I just don't see them beating Oregon. That's my pick. I'm picking Oregon over Indiana for this first game. Um, so I see USC playing Oregon, and then whoever they play next is whoever they play next, whether that be Maryland or Washington or Michigan.
Okay, so since you're picking Oregon, let's just briefly talk about that. They met in December, like they played one of those early conference games, not part of the regular meat of the conference season the past 2 months, but now with conference expansion, the power conferences play one or two conference games right after Thanksgiving. So a lot's happened since that last USC Oregon game. USC winning very comfortably in Eugene. Anything of note that's like changed within Oregon since then? Obviously, we've been
Yeah.
documenting this USC season every step of the way. What's been different for Oregon since early December under Kelly Graves?
Deja Kelly. Deja Kelly has been taking the lead. She's been taking control. She's been doing more for this team. She's become the primary. So she's been the big difference, in my opinion. So I think that if we play Oregon, I still don't think that Oregon can match up to our transition game. I just think a lot of these teams can't deal with our transition game other than Maryland, you know. Um, but we'll see. I mean, I haven't really paid that much attention to Oregon. I look at their stats and I look at their highlights and I see that Deja Kelly has taken a lot more control. But as all these teams have gotten better, so has USC. So it's going to be interesting to see game plans. Like if they go look at the film from when we played them before, Indiana, Oregon, whoever it is, how are they going to change? Are they going to change their defensive strategy against us? Or are they going to double? I would imagine most other teams, other than UCLA, for whatever reason, are going to double Jew. Um, Michigan doubled Jew before when we played them. Maryland threw bodies at Juju. Oregon threw bodies at Juju. So I'm looking to see how we respond to that because the last three games against Illinois, UCLA twice, Juju didn't face double teams. Illinois didn't double team Juju either. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Let's talk about a potential semifinal on Saturday, March 8th, if USC is able to win its quarterfinal. And by the way, USC's quarterfinal, because USC is the one seed plays the first game to get more rest than the other teams. Like that is the philosophy at the Big Ten tournament, and I think it's a good philosophy. Like USC will get more turnaround time between games. UCLA gets bumped to the night session as the 2 seed, so there's less turnaround time for the Bruins. So USC's quarterfinal for those in the Pacific time zone, 9 a.m. on Friday. Have a little breakfast basketball at the Big Ten women's tournament. Have your bacon and eggs and coffee all set up for 9 a.m. on Big Ten Network. And hey, no more Pac-12 Network Siberia for the Trojans during the conference tournament. It's BTN on Friday and Saturday, and if the Trojans get to Sunday, it's CBS at 1:30 Pacific, middle of the afternoon, prime TV real estate for the Trojans. So this is a more visible tournament on television. That's going to be a great benefit to fans. But again, the Friday quarterfinal, 9 a.m. in the West, noon in the East. So if USC gets past that Friday quarterfinal, CC, it could be Maryland in the semis. And we know that Maryland led USC by 7 in the fourth quarter in College Park. Kaylee Heckle, Kennedy Smith, helping Juju get the Trojans across the finish line in that game back in mid-January. It was a real growth point for this USC team, the freshmen helping the starters get the job done. It was a moment when this team grew in confidence. The big change relative to that game, Cece, as you know well, Bree McDaniel. Yeah. She got injured, lost for the season after that game. She was a really tough defender. USC had problems with her quickness at both ends of the court. So my question to you is, how much does the absence of Bree McDaniel affect a potential USC Maryland semifinal at the Big Ten tournament if we get that on Saturday?
I think it's a big challenge for them because like you said, Bree McDaniel came in off the bench and she's the one that helped Maryland stick with us and then take the lead. She came in and played very aggressively. Without her, I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't really watched a lot of them. I'll probably go back and watch some film probably tomorrow of them to see. But I think that they're hurting now without Bree. She was a big part of their team coming off the bench. She probably would have got Sixth Player of the Year if she didn't get hurt.
Yeah, that was her trajectory, no question. And for people who haven't been following the non-USC teams in the Big Ten, Maryland beat Ohio State in a double overtime thriller this past Sunday in College Park. That was one of the better non-USC Big Ten games of the year. So, Maryland, Brenda Freeze, national championship coach from roughly 20 years ago, that's a formidable test if USC meets Maryland on
And
Saturday.
we played them early. We played them in the beginning of January, and we didn't play them very well. We played them in Maryland, and we didn't play our best. I mean, our defensive rating was in the 45 percentile, relating to NCAA percentiles as far as defense is concerned, and we're a defensive team. So that was one of our poor defensive games that we played all season long. That was probably by far one of the worst. So I expect the way they're playing now and the way they know that Maryland played against them, I expect to see a different USC team if we do have to play Maryland again. I think right now USC's on a mission. I still think that a lot of people don't believe in this team, and I think that this team knows that. So I think this team is on a mission to prove everybody wrong.
One thing about that Maryland game, that was really when dribble drive defense was not at its best, and that will be the number one priority, assuming we get that matchup.
Yeah.
Lindsey Gottlieb and Beth Burns, they're going to be pounding the chalkboard, saying stop the ball, especially when Maryland drives to the left. That's going to be priority number one in that game.
And that's been our Achilles heel all season is perimeter defense and dribble drive defense, but we have been getting better. We have been shifting over and helping, and UCLA tried to do a little dribble drive with Kiki Rice, and it didn't work. So Illinois tried to do some dribble drive, and it didn't work. We slowed them down. So our perimeter defense and our stopping the dribble drive is getting better, and it's going to have to as we get further in the tournament.
Yeah, in that regard, it might be really good for USC to play Maryland just because you want a vigorous test of your weaknesses right before the NCAA tournament. You want to know exactly where you stand. You want an opponent that's going to push you and explore everything about you as a team. So, in many ways, that could be very beneficial for USC. All right. Going to ask you about UCLA and Ohio State, that potential 2 versus 3 semifinal in just a bit. But before that, let's just ask a general question about managing these games because, of course, at the conference tournaments, you're playing one day after the other, no days in between. Because USC has won the Big Ten regular season, I mean, the UCLA is the team with the most to prove at this tournament. USC kicked them up and down the court in Poly, actually kicked them up and down the court for most of the game in Galen as well. So UCLA has the most to prove. So if you're USC, it's an interesting setup where like USC is not the most desperate team. It might still be the hungriest team and the best team, but like the urgency to win. If UCLA had beaten USC, then USC would need to win this tournament to get a number 1 seed, would need to win this tournament to get a championship, cut down some nets. There's not just the same level of urgency as there is on the UCLA side. So if all of that being said, Cece, and this is a 3-day tournament for the Trojans, it's longer for the teams that are playing in the earlier rounds. How do you think Lindsey's going to manage the minutes of the starters of the team to try and make sure that we need to take care of business, but we also need our players fresh for the next day, and I don't want to overwork my lead players too much before the NCAA tournament. I know there's a week off, but we just saw Kyrie Irving get injured with the Mavericks, and he was playing near 40 minutes a night. They were riding him hard. So you want to win, but you also don't want to, I think, crack the whip too hard in USC's position as well. Any thoughts, any preferences in terms of managing the minutes and how you see the coaching staff handling that at this conference tournament?
I'll just say one thing. Last year's Pac-12 tournament, there was no rest. Those girls went out and played how many games in a row? Took UCLA to triple overtime or double overtime. I don't know if it was, I don't remember, double or triple
Yeah.
overtime. And then they came out the next day and played Stanford and beat them handily.
Well, technically it wasn't the next day because remember the
Oh, they
Pac-12
had a
takes the
rest.
Saturday off.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
the Big Ten's not the same. They're just doing it Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that's a really interesting point because people might forget that USC did have a full day to recover from the semifinal, the double OT semifinal, going into the Sunday final against Stanford. But I mean, it really, I think, fleshes out the point.
Yeah, I think with a team like USC, with all the competitors that this team have, I mean, Kiki is very competitive, very competitive. Juju's very competitive. They want to win. You know what I mean? So, and I know that Lindsay wants to manage as much as she can. So I think it's going to be predicated on what they do in this first game. If they get out to a big lead early, by the end of the 10 minutes or 7, 6, 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, can she rest her players? Maybe, maybe not. I think that, they want to win. This is important to them because it's the first ever. They want to do a sweep. Not only do they want to win, the initial Big Ten conference, they want to win the tournament championship too. So it's a first, and then last year, Pac-12, that was the last, right? So I think that's important to them. And I think also, just as I said before in the beginning of this pod, seeding for the NCAA is really important. The difference between getting them a number 1 or the number 1 overall might be in winning this conference title. And that's going to make a huge difference in the competition that they play and the way that the brackets are set up. So I don't see Lindsay managing time to save, to say, okay, well, we're going to get a number 1 seed anyway. I don't think that's going to happen just because of the mindset of the team as a whole and the things that the goals that they wanted to achieve this year.
All right. So I said, this is a tournament preview, not just a USC preview. So, the USC UCLA in the final, that's obviously the game I think most people are looking forward to. But, in the previous rounds, UCLA Ohio State in a potential Saturday afternoon semifinal, that is definitely going to get a lot of attention as well if that matchup happens. I personally think, that's going to be the knockdown drag out game before the final. The final is obviously going to be a heavyweight bout one way or the other. But UCLA Ohio State, that was a very rugged street fight type of game in Pauley Pavilion. It was a few days before USC beat Ohio State. That was Ohio State's Los Angeles road trip. Any thoughts about the rematch between Ohio State and UCLA? And of course, first meeting in LA. This meeting not in Columbus, but it's in the Midwest. In Indianapolis. To me, Cece, this sets up as a down to the wire basketball game.
It does, but I don't think Ohio State has the size. They just don't have the size to match with Lauren Betts. Now, if teams were smart, they'd go back and watch the game film on USC and watch how USC defend, because Ohio's a defensive team too, and just watch how USC defended against UCLA, and then maybe change their strategy or the way they defend a little bit to kind of take after what USC did. And then Ohio State likes to run. UCLA is not a transition team. They don't really like to run. They'd rather set up in the half court and throw the ball into Lauren, and Lauren either throw it out or do her little reverse little movement and then take that layup shot. But so it might be a close game, but I'm still thinking UCLA will win this game just because they have the size, and they have the size and they have the better perimeter shooters than Ohio State does. Ohio State is not a very good perimeter shooting team other than Chance Gray, in my opinion. And if Chance Gray is not hitting, she's been inconsistent. And if she's not consistent for this game, then that helps UCLA. However, I will tell you, my dark horse in this is Iowa. You know what I mean? If Iowa gets to the semifinals and plays UCLA again, there's a chance they might beat them. And then that would set up a final of USC Iowa.
And Iowa is one of the toughest number 11 seeds I've ever seen in a conference tournament. Again, it underscores the depth of this Big Ten conference this year. All right, so we've talked about quarters, we've talked about semis. Now we have to talk about a potential final, which would be, again, Sunday afternoon, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 in the East on CBS. It could be USC UCLA Part 3. The obvious point is Corey Close gonna just admit defeat, not in terms of saying she can't beat USC, but in terms of, all right, I'm gonna double Juju Watkins. I'm not gonna play her straight up. You would think after being beaten over the head twice this year and 4 times in a row that Corey Close is just gonna say, hey, we just gotta be doubling Juju and getting the ball out of her hands.
One of the things that I brought up was, that I said before was, if Corey Close decides to double, do they know how? And that might be, the reason why she's not doubling is because they don't know how. You know what I mean? They don't, because of Lauren Betts, because of her inability to come out and guard on the perimeter, right? And them always playing drop coverage, which is the worst thing that she can do against the likes of Juju. Do they know how to effectively double? And now they were throwing some different, like when Juju was down on the baseline, they were doubling her. So down on the baseline, they could double her. You know why? Why, Matt? Because Lauren Betts is right there, right?
Yes.
So they're going to double they're going to double her down on the baseline, and Lauren Betts is right there in the middle. So if Juju still tries to shoot the ball, Lauren Betts is right there for the rebound. They don't double her on top because why, Matt? Because Lauren Betts won't come out, right? Because she's always playing drop coverage. So what do? You either got to throw some high hedges at her. You got to switch. They weren't switching. They can switch. They're not switching, and then they go under the screens instead of over the top. Because they're playing drop coverage. So I don't know the philosophy like right now if they could instill that defense within a day to where their team gets it. You know what I mean? Because they're so used to not having to double all season long that throw the psyche of the team off even more, right? And then Juju would just facilitate, and so would Rhea, facilitate. And then you have Kiki who's playing really really hot right now. So I don't know. I don't know what Corey does at this point because their philosophy has been not to double, and so if they throw that in now, what's their defense going to look like? Because when I was doing film breakdown, their defense was lost in single coverage of Juju. And it's because they don't have a viable five or four that can defend on the perimeter or come up and help. They just don't. They just
And
keep them in drop coverage.
And it really illustrates the point that while Lauren Betts, has been rolling up, accumulating huge numbers of block shots, she's doing it from a position of safety on the court. Whereas
Yeah.
Rhea Marshall, she's not going to accumulate the same raw stats and numbers as Lauren Betts, but she is asked to do so much more as a
Yep.
defender, covering the whole every spot on the floor, being on the front line of the press. We've seen Lindsay and Beth Burns deploy her on the front of the press, not just the back end protecting the rim,
Yeah.
but also on the front. And so that's the range and versatility, kind of the Draymond Green-like ability to go anywhere on the floor and play meaningful defense. That is a big point of separation
Yeah.
on defense between Rhea
Yeah.
and Lauren Betts.
And even offensively, you see Rhea she comes out into the lava. She'll go up to the top of the key. She'll go, sometimes they play her out on the baseline. She'll come down and she'll cut, but she's outside of the comfort zone. Whereas Lauren Betts, she does not, she doesn't come outside the comfort. Very, very rarely will she come out of, and get in the lava. But her feet don't like the lava. I don't get it, and what's interesting to me is you talk about development, and I'm not going to get on a rant or anything, but when you talk about a development of somebody going into the WNBA, these bigs nowadays have to learn how to defend on a perimeter, have to learn how to play on a perimeter because they don't have the traditional bigs in the W anymore. Not like they used to. Even Asia. Asia plays outside in the lava. She doesn't stay in the comfort cool zone. She's out in the lava. She defends out in the lava as well. So if you talk about development, I mean, I understand that she's 6'7", but Camila Cadorso runs a court. She runs. She's a rim runner. She'll come out on perimeter if she has to. But I just, if UCLA and USC play again, I would think before they try and double Juju because I think they would get burned off of trying to double her. I think they would go to a zone before that.
Really good call there because, three-pointers is not something USC has done well. And maybe they'll just kind of pinch on Avery Howell and they will make other USC players try to beat them from the three-point line. Okay, we've gone through every round of the bracket at the Big Ten Women's Tournament. Cece, any other thoughts? And also, of course, promote your YouTube channel and your Substack as well.
Yeah, first I want to say I did put out an X or a tweet or whatever, asking for donations to get me. I did get my credential from the NCAA. Was looking excited to go, and for my real job that pays the bills, we have an integration going on right now with our web platform. So, going to the Big Ten tournament, I'm going to be gone from work for 3 days, and then to leave again for the NCAA tournament. I don't I don't think I'll be able to do that. But I'm not saying I'm not going to do it. But as of right now, it looks like I might wait and then try and get to the Final Four if USC goes to the Final Four. So that's my thought process. Um, but we'll see. But anyways, that being said, for those of you that did donate, I genuinely thank you for supporting me. I appreciate it. It is a dream of mine to be able to cover this USC team and follow them for every step along the way and be able to come back and report to you guys through this pod, through YouTube, through writing articles on what I've seen, what I've experienced, and so on and so forth. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. Your refunds are coming. And again, I'm so humbled and just thank you.
Okay. And so your YouTube and your Substack, any things that you have going on this week that you'd like to showcase for people?
Yeah, just the stories that I have on Substack right now are all basically around Lindsay Gottlieb and what makes her a phenomenal coach, her philosophy of coaching, what she's done in the past, and then the last one I wrote was her um, being in the same field of Cheryl Miller and Marianne Stanley is the only two other coaches that have won or have four consecutive wins over UCLA, and it hasn't been done since Cheryl Miller. So that's how many years is that? So just the things that Lindsay Gottlieb is doing, and of course Juju is a big part of that because Juju is a vocal point of this team. But Lindsay did have to be able to recruit her, and Juju did have to buy in. I don't think you would see Juju on a USC court if Mark Track was coaching, and that's no disrespect to Mark Track, but I just don't see that happening. So Lindsay Gottlieb, um, she's a good coach, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, I just to briefly bring that point up, right? Lindsey Gottlieb's coach of the year only because of Juju Watkins. Well, wait a minute. Isn't it a coach's job to recruit the best players, right? Doesn't that mean you're a good coach if you're recruiting Juju Watkins successfully over other schools? So
Yeah,
that logic gets twisted. Like
yeah.
they both like to be clear, they both deserve the credit. But like when a coach recruits an elite player, we don't say, "Oh, well, it's just the player." Well, no, this is recruiting. This is college sports, right?
And the one thing that you have to recognize is that uh, Lindsay Gottlieb, at the beginning of her tenure at USC, as we've talked about before, wasn't that team wasn't good, and then she brought in Destiny Littleton, but she had some other players, like she brought in that player from Minnesota, and that team wasn't a talented. I mean, they weren't talented, but they turned into one of the best defensive teams in the country, and they ended up going to the first round of the NCAA tournament, and nobody expected that, right? Nobody expected Lindsay to do that in year two, right? And so the what she's done, and then last year bringing in the Ivies, that was four transfers that she brought in, including the Ivies. But this year, her bringing in seven freshmen and two graduate transfers, and getting them to understand that even though you came from programs where you were the primary or you were the star or you won state championships, here we need you to play a specific role and getting them to buy into that. Now it's taken some time for these players to understand what their role is and to, fill that role coming from superstar status in their own right, right? But the coaching staff's ability to mold nine new players as a puzzle, and have them feel comfortable with the piece that they represent to complete the puzzle. You can't say enough about her doing that, that's hard. You know what I mean? Especially with today's landscape, NIL. Now South Carolina does a good job of that, admittedly, right? Being able to get superstars and be able to buy into a role. And I think that Lindsay Gottlieb this year has done a phenomenal job of that. It's seven freshmen. You know what I mean? And all of them won state championships or went to their state championships or won Gatorade Player of the Year or won awards. You know what I mean? So you got all these superstars coming in that think that they're going to do more than what they're being asked of. So shout out to the players too for having to adjust their mindset to say, "Hey, I'm going to buy in because we're a team and I want to help this team win." And that's a lot on them too, especially young 18-year-old girls. I mean, they're young 18-year-old girls, and everybody has their own thinking of what they want to do and what they should be doing and where they should be. So I'm sorry, I'm getting off on a tangent, but I
No,
just
this
think
is
that
this is exactly it. Like these are players who are superstars at the high school level. When you come up to college, you're not going to get 35 points a night. You're not going to dominate the stat sheet. How do you interact with other stars and help the team? So like you're managing egos. And again, I've said this before. Ego is not a bad thing. Ego is what propels you to be great. Ego is aspiration. Ego is determination. Ego is drive. But of course, it has to be channeled. If it becomes selfish, that's when everything collapses. But getting these egos to come together, that is hard. Like, hello, Phil Jackson, like that was his special quality. He got Kobe and Shaq. He got Jordan and Pippen to come together, for the team. Like that's not simple. Like he had the
Yeah,
most talent, but the talent has to come together. If the talent doesn't come together, it doesn't amount to anything. That's what Lindsay Gottlieb and her staff are doing. So yeah, this is not easy, folks. It's not
yeah,
easy.
it's not easy. And so, kudos, and I keep reiterating it because I think it's just important for people to really understand the science and the magic behind what a head coach has to do to put a championship team together, especially with players that are young, that came from schools that they were the primary scorer or the superstar, and then having to channel their egos into understanding that, hey, this is USC, and basically this is a Juju Watkins team. So we need you. You're an important piece for this team, but the team runs through Juju. And so them being able to accept that and excel now, you can tell that it's taken some time. It's taken some adjustment for their egos or to change the way that they think within their ego. But it's an ongoing process. It's an everyday process, and I couldn't do it. I just know and that's admittedly I couldn't do it. I mean, when I was a coach, I was just dealing with 11 and 12-year-olds, and that was enough. And just dealing with their parents, you know what I mean? And then for work, as a district manager previously dealing with, a team of 18 that all have different personalities. You have to learn how to talk to each individual the way that they'll buy in to what you're trying to achieve. This player, you might be able to yell at them, or this employee, you might be able to yell at them. Same thing with a player. This employee, you have to have a more subtle approach. It's the same thing with coaching. So it's you can't have a cookie cutter type of system when dealing with multiple players that are stars, that are young, and that all think that they should be the queen. So that's what, and I'm not saying that's what's going on this team. I'm just saying in general, when you're building a team and a system and a culture, it takes time. That culture is getting better and better every year. Is it where Lindsay wants it to be? I don't think so. I think that still needs to grow. It still needs to nurture. But I think in the next couple of years, you'll see that culture right where it needs to be.
And we will certainly get a test of that culture at the Big Ten tournament and then leading into the NCAA tournament. So, Big Ten women's tournament. It's on Big Ten Network. The first round on Wednesday is on Peacock, but then the second round on Thursday, quarterfinals on Friday, USC at 9 a.m. in Los Angeles. And then USC's semifinal, if it gets there, is Saturday at noon Pacific, 3 in the East, also on BTN. And if USC gets to the final, it's on Sunday, 1:30 Pacific, 4:30 Eastern on CBS. CC Clay will be following that tournament along with us here at Trojans Wire, and we will be sure to let you know what we have coming up in terms of other shows, content, YouTube videos from CC, more CC Substack writings. We will just keep you posted. Stay tuned on Twitter. Go to our Trojans Wire feed and go to CC's Twitter feed, My Thoughts 0530. We're going to be keeping you updated and giving you a steady stream of USC women's basketball content. It's conference tournament time.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing. For those of you who like the website version, Trojans Wire is on the website as well, and you never mentioned the website, so mention the website, trojanswire.com,
Yep,
right?
trojanswire.usatoday.com. And of course, our podcasts, we tweet them out. We tweet out the audio file, but then CC then takes the podcast to her YouTube channel where you get the video version. You get to see CC and myself talking ball, talking USC women's basketball. All right, CC.
Yeah, and you know
Big
what?
Ten.
And you know what? I just want to say, I want to shout out to everybody who does watch the video version, because we are seeing some growth numbers in the video version of that. When you comment on if there's something specific you want me and Matt to address, or Matt and I to address, please, just ask. We'll be willing to do our research if it's something that it needs to be researched, and we'd be happy to bring it to the pod and discuss it. So please don't hesitate to leave comments on the video version of what you're interested in hearing us talk about, because we'd love to bring to you what you want to hear about. That's most important.
That's right. We're serving you as the audience. Like, if just having us talk, it might be fun for CC and myself, but if no one's paying attention, that certainly is not what we're after. We want people to interact with us for sure, and we want to know that you're getting some value out of everything we're doing. Because hey, CC's putting in a ton of work, writing, podcasting, YouTube video presentation. So yeah, we're doing this for you. We're doing this for the audience. So feedback absolutely encouraged and appreciated. All right, enjoy the Big Ten Women's Tournament, everybody. Follow our coverage at Trojans Wire. Follow CC's coverage at YouTube and Substack. Enjoy March Madness, everybody. We'll see you next time.